We got Dave in New York.
Hey, sorry. That I was just listening to that for 25 minutes, and it was really annoying because the caller just wouldn't realize that he had no essential point. But I wanted to ask you guys.
You can prove that you can do better.
Yeah.
Not really. I don't think so. Well, personally, I'm an atheist, but I wanted to ask you guys about a logical argument that I sort of deduced and sort of borrowed from this guy, Berkeley. I don't know if you've heard of Berkeley.
Gnarls Berkeley?
No,
Charles Berkeley?
Bishop George Berkeley.
No.
Okay.
He was an English philosopher. And basically, I don't know if you're familiar with the point he puts forward, but he says that all things, essentially, metaphysically, are concepts. They're conceptual. And he tries to defend this by saying there's no evidence for matter, the abstract concept that materialists refer to as matter, exists. So, and most people probably rejected it because that's ridiculous sounding. Of course, things outside of our perceptions exist. But the way I see it, they really don't have a good reason to do that by Occam's razor.
What do you mean they don't have a good reason to do that? What do you mean by they?
Like a materialist, for instance. Like, are you a naturalist? Do you accept the proposition that matter is an external thing and there's a physical world and a mental world?
Yeah, this whole argument is, he's basically arguing for solipsism, or arguing based on solipsism, that we have no way of verifying that, for example, we're not a brain in a vat and that the entire world that we experience it doesn't actually exist. Okay, and my answer is, so what? If I may in fact be a brain in a vat, and you guys might all be figments of my imagination or some massive delusion that's being fed to me, but it doesn't matter, because I am forced, at least for now, until someone demonstrates otherwise, to deal with the reality that I experience within the boundaries of that reality that I experience. If there is some other reality, that actually needs to be demonstrated, and it not just assumed simply because we cannot prove that we are experiencing the ultimate reality.
Well, yeah, that's what he ontologically deduces, supposedly. He's saying that if all things are mental, they're located in a mind. Therefore, we are all located in the same mind. It happens to be that...
well, the if all things are mental or conceptual is a false assumption. He's correct. He's correct. If all things are conceptual, then they're in a mind, but that's a tautology. The point that he needs to demonstrate is that everything is actually conceptual. He needs to demonstrate that we're not experiencing the ultimate reality, that this is all a fictional reality. That needs to be demonstrated, not asserted.
Well, if everywhere if the universal law of gravitation is active everywhere, that's also a tautology. That's an assumption.
No, it isn't.
But scientists assume it anyway.
I can prove it. See?
Well, yeah, you proved it for that location.
Sure.
Now you have to...
yes. No. Now you've branched off to something else, and that's whether or not we can rely on the value of inductive reasoning to say that what's the laws of the universe in this area are most probably existent elsewhere. And we know, in fact, that we may not be able to say that.
Okay, but...
Which is why science doesn't define truth. Science creates models that give us an understanding which is tentative based on new information. All we can say is that in all the cases that we have observed, gravity operates in this way.
Yep.
Well, yeah, but as a scientist, you'd still make deductions about that. For instance,
yes.
In all the strata we've seen in the early Cambrian, there are tribolites. Therefore, tribolites were present in the early Cambrian factually everywhere in the world, even though we haven't tested it everywhere in the world. So, scientifically, it seems to me...
No, I don't think we conclude that trilobites existed everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
We conclude that they existed in that time period in that strata that we've uncovered.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They concluded that they were present in the ocean, in all particular locations in the ocean, in that time.
No, not in in the particular locations in which they've been found. It's not like the entire ocean during this period was a sea of trilobites.
No, of course not. But
Okay.
the deduction.
But I mean,
is,
and you've branched off from talking about a scientific law, a physical law, off to an aspect of evolutionary theory. So, I mean, where are you going with this? Because you're kind of all over the map here.
yeah, it seems like I'm sort of jumping around. But essentially, what I'm saying is, you can inductively say that all things are pretty much conceptual. And if you can say that, or at least we have a good reason to believe that all things are conceptual, because everything
why?
we come across is conceptual.
No. The fact that you conceive something does not mean that its ontological nature is conceptual. That is a fallacy. What is the good reason that you have for assuming that everything is conceptual simply because we can conceive it?
What do you propose it is instead, besides conceptual? Material?
Matter?
Yeah.
If it's material, then explain to me what this materialness means. What is it? What's the property of matter?
What is the property of matter?
Yeah, what is it? What does it mean? What do you mean when you say matter?
Why does it need to mean something?
Yeah.
Well, you're saying that I need to explain, or theists would ever need to explain. Oh, define God before you say that you think he exists.
Right.
Well, you have to also define matter before you say it exists.
Matter has a
as opposed to
definition.
concept.
Yeah, it's
Just because we don't know everything about it doesn't mean that it's not defined. But the big thing is that this is what we directly experience. It becomes the default position, and if you're asserting, in fact, that this cup doesn't exist, that it is, in fact, only a concept, that's something you need to demonstrate, not just assert. And so you said a minute ago that we have good reason to think that everything is conceptual, and I'm saying, what's that good reason?
The good reason is everything we come across is observed through sensory perceptions. There's no object which we've observed.
No. You just said observed. That verb
Yeah.
means that we did observe an object.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's tautology.
What good reason do we have to think that everything is conceptual?
Because there's no other nature to objects that we can talk about. Like you're saying that atoms exist externally to the mind, and they're this physical stuff, and they have an essence or whatever, and they're made out of matter. I want you to explain what the nature of that is, the substance of that is.
You just did.
yeah.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. Saying atoms are this thing that exist outside of our minds doesn't really explain anything about atoms.
Have you looked at a periodic table lately?
We can weigh
yes.
them.
Yeah, it describes a lot of properties of a lot of different kinds of atoms.
That's great, but it doesn't show how those properties are physical and external to the world, to the mental world, as opposed to just mental.
You're correct. We cannot demonstrate that solipsism isn't true. I said that at the beginning. You are now saying that we have good reason to think that it is true, and your argument is that we can't disprove it, therefore it is true. That is an
that's not my
argument.
argument. My argument
No,
Okay.
sir. It's an argument from ignorance. I settled this at the beginning when I said that we could not disprove it, that we must assume by necessity, a matter of practicality, that the reality that we experience is real, and that if it's not, that needs to be demonstrated. And your argument is that because we cannot demonstrate that it's actually real and not conceptual, that this gives us good reason to think that it's conceptual. And that's a fallacy that called an argument from ignorance.
But by Occam's razor, we would have to assume it's the best possible solution. Because if you're saying
Dave,
that,
you're an idiot.
Okay.
Dave, you're an idiot, and I'll tell you why. Because I've explained the fallacy, and instead of coming back with an explanation that clarifies why it's not a fallacy, which would involve a restructuring of the argument, instead you spit out Occam's razor. And by using Occam's razor, you're committing the same fallacy again, because you're going to misuse Occam's razor to make an argument from ignorance. Occam's razor, meaning that we shouldn't multiply entities beyond necessity.
All right, so let me address.
And I
the
already
argument from
told
ignorance.
you what the necessity was.
Okay, so you're saying I'm making an argument from ignorance.
Yes.
Yes.
I understand that.
So don't do it again.
But, okay, would I be making an argument from ignorance if I was to say, hey, all the people we've run across have cells, so we should infer that all people have cells.
No,
Why not?
because that's inductive reasoning.
But that's exactly the same thing as saying all the things we've come across are sensory, so we should infer that all things are sensory.
No, because, oh boy, as I said about 5 or 10 minutes ago, just because we can conceive of things does not mean they are by nature conceptual.
Okay, but what are they? Are you a skeptic? Are you saying that nothing exists at all and it doesn't really have a nature? Or
No, that's what you're saying.
But you're saying that everything is physical. It has this
Yes,
nature.
yes,
That's
and the
also
fact
their assertion, as much as it is for me to say that
it's not a Dave, I'm going to hang up, I swear to God. It's not a bald assertion. As I explained at the beginning, it's a practical necessity. I experience this reality, and I must deal with this reality within the scope of this reality. I don't know whether or not it's the ultimate reality, and until somebody demonstrates that there is a reality beyond this, I have no good reason to think there is. That is the application of Occam's razor that applies.
Okay, so reality is reality, basically.
Boy.
Wow.
What you're saying.
You get
Yes.
it.
Okay, I was just confused as to why you're saying reality is material instead of reality. I just don't know.
Really?
I don't know. But thanks for answering that. Sort of. You sort of helped me understand what your positions are better.
Well, I'll remember next time to just start with reality is reality. Because a tautology really clarifies things, Dave.